Today we celebrate Wednesday in the fifth week of Easter, so let me share today's gospel with you. It comes from the Gospel of John, 15th chapter. Jesus said to his disciples, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He takes away every branch in me that does not bear fruit, and every one that does, he prunes so that it will bear more fruit. You are already pruned because of the word that I spoke to you. Remain in me as I remain in you. Just as a branch cannot bear fruit on its own unless it remains on the vine, so neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit, because without me you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me will be thrown out like a branch and wither. People will gather them and throw them into a fire, and they will be burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask for whatever you want, and it will be done for you. By this, my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. By this, my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. So it is good for us to talk about discipleship, being disciples of Christ. And where does that start? It starts in the family. One of my textbooks when I was studying family ministry was this, Forming Intentional Disciples by Sherry Weddell. And in it, she gives us a lot of really interesting statistics. And one of them is this, that only 30% of Americans who were raised Catholic are still practicing their Catholic faith. Every one of us knows people who were raised Catholic and are no longer practicing their faith. It may even be our own children or another relative, or certainly someone we know. And so I'd like to talk about how to keep our kids, our families, Catholic, because we want them to have the gift of their Catholic faith and all the grace that goes along with that, including salvation. We want to have them to have that for life. So there was a sociologist who did a study on why young people leave the church. And this is what he found. He found that only about 2% left the church because they felt that their spiritual needs are not being met. They might have become they might have joined one of the Protestant denominations. Well, that's only 2%, but 19% left because they were living a lifestyle that is at odds with the teachings of the Catholic Church. And I know young people and others that are exactly in that situation. They no longer practice their faith because their lifestyle is at total odds with the teachings of the church, and so they just don't bother with the church. They want to continue their lifestyle. But here's what actually concerned me the most. 23% left the church because they simply didn't relate to the church. They didn't relate to going to Mass. They didn't relate to the things that the church teaches or the things that the church practices. And the biggest group, 52%, left the church because their family situation growing up was an unhappy one. When they think back and think about their family life, well, it wasn't exactly happy all the time, never is. But when it had to do with the church, it was just not a happy situation. So knowing this, Ken Kensley gives us some admonitions, actually 6 admonitions on how to keep the kids Catholic. Let's look at. First of all, we have to realize that faith won't stick if it doesn't go from the head to the heart. We can teach our kids how to make the sign of the cross. We can teach them how to say the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the Glory Be. We can teach them how to genuflect and when to stand, sit, and kneel during the Mass. And all that is good. It all has meaning. But if their faith never goes from the head to the heart, then it won't stick. It won't last. Because what we believe in the heart is what we do and who we are. The Christian faith from the heart is an intimate, personal, loving relationship with God through Christ. A relationship that boils over and spills out onto every family member and everyone else that we meet, right? So this relationship is what we want. We want for our children. And so let's talk about how we're going to do that. Let's look at the 6 admonitions. First one is to provide a home and a family that our children will remember with happiness. And how do we do that? Well, there's something called the 3 A's. And I don't mean the American Automobile Association. It has to do with family and loved ones. It's something that everybody wants. The 3 A's are authentic love, affection, and attention. Everyone wants that. A lot of us get it from our families, from our spouses, our children, but many do not. So we have to purposely work on that. Authentic love is love that gives, self-giving love, love that really wants, deep down, wants what is best for the other person. Authentic love, affection, and attention. Right? So important. Many of us don't pay attention to our children, other family members, like we should. We're revolving only in our own circles. We don't come together. Second one was to teach by example that God is really the answer and that there's a solid link between the happiness in our home realized by the triple A's and our love for God, and that the answer for our search for truth and happiness, something everybody is looking for, but the answer to our search is God Himself. Teach that by example to our children. And third, talk to our children about where true and lasting happiness is found. It has to be done in ways that will be meaningful to our children. If you studied education, you would know that some people are visual learners, some are auditory learners, and some are kinesthetic learners, right? The visual ones, of course, have to see it. The auditory ones have to hear it. And the kinesthetic ones, they actually have to do it. They're hands-on learners, right? So we have to teach our children and interact with our children and present the triple A to them, authentic love, affection, and attention, in a way that they would relate the most to. It depends on what type of learner they are, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. You don't know? Do them all, okay? They're going to hear it from you, they're going to see it from you, and they're going to feel it from you, right? That's so important. Here's the graph, okay? Um, there really are 4 levels of happiness. Level number 1 is what most human beings do. They believe that pleasure, maybe getting that new car, the new boat, or whatever it is, that pleasure will make them happy. And it does immediately, but it doesn't last. It's only temporary. Ken Kensley, who teaches theology in New Orleans, he tells a story about his son, Kenny. And this is back in the 80s, and his son was crazy about Beanie Babies. It was a little stuffed animal. There was dozens of them, and they had names to them. And at that time, Ken and his wife were just barely making ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck, and they couldn't afford to buy Kenny any of these Beanie Babies. They were expensive. And every time he went to the store, he would find them and beg for them. I would be the happiest boy in the world if I just had these Beanie Babies. Well, one day, another family comes to visit, and they have a little boy that's a few years older than Kenny. And Kenny um, and this boy, they really got along well. But when the boy comes in, after his parents do, he's carrying a big box. And he just walks right into the middle of a living room and dumps out the box, and it's a box full of Beanie Babies. And he says, Kenny, I know that you love Beanie Babies, that they'll make you the happiest boy in the world. So here they are, right? Uh, I I don't use them anymore. And so Kenny was going crazy. Look, all these Beanie Babies. He could name every one of them. And so he puts them all in the box and he runs up to his room and he plays with the Beanie Babies. And he's up there about 45 minutes. But after that, he comes down and he's got a little frown on his face. And his father goes, What? What, Kenny? You should be the happiest boy in the world. Look at all the Beanie Babies you got. That's what'll make you happy, right? He goes, Well, I don't know. I'm tired of them. So, pleasure and things, immediate happiness, but the happiness fades. Level two on the happiness scale is achievement. When we become uh, the top salesman in the company, right? Or we win an award. I used to think I'd be happy if I won awards when I had my business and for top salesman and things like that, different companies that we represented, and I did. I got in fact I won so many of them that I no longer wanted the awards because and the trophies and the plaques I had no place to put them. It filled my office. Um, and this is a little bit longer term happiness than just the pleasure, which is just immediate, but it is still short term, right? It fades, right? I never even look at these things anymore. The third level, and many people in this world never make it to that third level. The third level is when we make a contribution. We do something to change someone else's life. Because of us, their life was enhanced, improved. It was good for them. Now, that's a long-term happiness. The missionaries of the poor down in Jamaica are a really good example. You go down there and you might work with them or visit them, and you see they are the happiest guys in the world. I mean, they are always happy. And what did they do? They don't own anything. And, you know, uh, there's no awards to win because they spend all of their time, um, caring for the people that the brothers take in their facilities. These are people that have disabilities and would not even survive on the streets. Many times their parents even leave them on the doorstep of the brothers' facilities because they can no longer afford to take care of them. And so these brothers take care of them. They feed them, they bathe them. Uh, and they are just the happiest guys in the world 24/7. It's a long-term happiness. Uh, when you make a contribution, when the world is different because you were there. And finally, the ultimate good, eternally enduring happiness. When we have established a firm, intimate, loving relationship with God through Christ, that relationship boils up and overflows onto all of our other relationships in life, right? That's enduring happiness, level four in the happiness scale. Okay, let's get back to the six admonitions. The fourth admonition is active participation in the church with the family. So it's not just sending the kids to Sunday school, it's not just taking them to Mass, but it's active participation with the faith community, especially in outreach ministries together, right? Show our children how good it feels when we can reach out and help others in need. We have to learn our faith, live our faith, and share our faith as a family, not just as individuals. So important. And we have to be able, the fifth admonition is we have to be able to explain our Catholic faith and the reasons that we believe it, right? We have to have the answers, because if we don't have the answers and we can't explain it to them, then they'll look for the answers in all the wrong places. And finally, I say pray for our children. My daughter had left the Catholic faith years ago, and she became a Southern Baptist. She was actually even baptized a second time uh, in the Baptist church. And she had met some people there and was convinced that was the true faith. And so I kept praying and praying that she'd come back to the Catholic Church. She's an elementary school teacher, and she'd been teaching for 14, 15 years in the public schools. And she was having a problem with some of the things about that public schools. And I asked her, well, why don't you try St. John Neumann Regional Catholic School? So she talked to the principal. She got a job teaching there. And after she was a teacher at St. John Neumann just for a few months, and she saw how wonderful the Mass was and how all of the children participated and the other teachers, and what a wonderful community we had. What a faith community that is actually living our faith together, doing outreach together. All of this impressed her so much that she said to me, Dad, I want to be Catholic. Okay? So I put her through the RCIA, and she uh, came back to the Catholic Church and actually was confirmed and at an Easter vigil. It was wonderful. But continue to pray for our children, because miracles happen all the time. We know that. It's proved by history. I can prove it from my own history. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. And this is one way to start in the family and make disciples for life. God bless you.